Hi, Alan Combies here, creator of theskillsforchange.com and this little video series that I call Morning Coffee with Alan. In this video, I want to share some ideas about belief systems and uncovering those belief systems and what is a belief system and what is that all about. Most of our behavior in the moment is dictated by our sort of mental map of who we think we are, which is made up of all of our experiences and it's the memories and the emotions and what we tell ourselves, our mental self-talk. And of course that mental self-talk is sort of a sum of it's a sum of the interpretation of all of the experiences that we've had in the past. Now the challenging thing is that when we have experiences, that experience happens in that moment, but then from that point on it's no longer happening. And so if we have a particular experience that's coupled with a lot of emotion, this tends to leave a solid imprint in our minds. And our sort of subconscious mind processes it and says, oh, okay, and it makes a decision, and it makes a judgment call on that experience. And our subsequent experiences will either add to, like enhance, or downplay that experience. Now the important thing to realize is that when we go back to the past and we think about these things and we either enhance or downplay those experiences, we're not going to the past, right? In other words, time travel, as far as I know, is not possible, right? So, yet it seems like when we recall the past, it seems like we are stepping back into the past, right? What makes it seem so real? Well, it's the feelings, right? It's the mental images. It's the pictures in our minds. It's the sounds that we create. It's the emotional reaction. And it feels like we're going back to the past, but that's a grand illusion. You can't reach out and touch last Thursday, right? So really all it is we're really experiencing in that moment is our thinking. And we're thinking right here, right now. We're not thinking in the past. We're not thinking in the future. We're thinking right here in this moment. And typically, right here in this moment, everything is okay. Typically, right? Of course, you could be experiencing something in the moment, barring any emergencies. The fact that you're listening to this right now means that pretty much right now, in this moment, everything is okay, right? It's when we step into those, I'll call it self-hypnotic trances, right? We step into those memories and we begin to feel things as if they were real. That's where we kind of get into trouble. And the more we choose to entertain these things, sometimes the more convoluted or the more intricate those memories and thought patterns can get. So why do I bring this all up? Well, sometimes we take a look at our behavior and we kind of scratch our heads and we kind of go, why do I behave this way? Or we tend to just have an overall feeling of anxiety or sadness, right? Or maybe guilt. We just have an overriding sensation of guilt, and we're not really sure where it's coming from, right? In other words, we don't really know what the memory is or what the thinking is or where it's coming from. And the reason that is because we've just gotten really, really good about thinking about it. We've gotten really, really good about thinking about different thoughts that bring up this emotion. And in fact, we've made such a habit out of it that it's become unconscious. And when those things become unconscious, we tend to accept them as reality. They become beliefs. And it can be difficult to uncover these beliefs, and sometimes they can be, as I said, quite intricate. There can be a lot of different memories, and we can have a lot of different support systems to create these beliefs. And typically we've been thinking about them for a long time, as I said, so they're sort of operating underneath the radar. And so this is really what we call subconscious and subconscious mind, or unconscious beliefs. Now the key is that you know something is going on, something is amiss, because you can feel it. In other words, you can feel the guilt, you can feel the sadness, you can feel whatever it is that's, being stirred up in you. So how do you uncover these things? How do you uncover the thoughts behind everything? I want to share a story with you. Several years ago, it was right around the time I began studying, these change modalities, specifically Faster EFT. I was really beginning to get into it, and I was beginning to address my emotions and my beliefs, my thought patterns, and I was really beginning to train myself to recognize when I was feeling down. And I remember I went up to visit family for a weekend, and it was my stepdad's birthday, and I went up there, and it was at the house where I pretty much spent my teenage years in. And from like 15 to 17. And I found myself sitting in a room. It wasn't my old room, but it was the room that, might have been my sister's room, it had been my brother's room. But I remember sitting in this room. It was now the guest room. And all of a sudden I just got overwhelmed with all of these feelings, right? All of these feelings began getting stirred up, and it was a familiar sensation. But I hadn't felt it with that intensity in quite a while. And so I began to ask myself, why am I feeling this way? And I realized that I was being flooded with all kinds of memories from childhood, just from being in that environment, from growing up in that area, from growing up in that house, and just being back in that city, and memories of, and these were, interestingly enough, these were memories that were causing guilt and anxiety, and I was judging myself, and so a lot of stuff was coming up, and it was really astounding, how much was coming up. And so what I did was I began to use the tools that I had began studying. So here it is, for the first time I'm realizing that I had all these memories, I had all these sensations, and it was being triggered by my environment. And I had the presence of mind, because I had been studying this, to recognize the feelings and address the memories. And I sat in that room, and I tapped, and I tapped, and I tapped, and I tapped. And as you tap, as you address your memories this way, the tapping brings the emotion down. It sort of separates the emotion from the memory. And as you bring the emotion down, you relax the body, you begin clearing the mind, and how you represent those memories begins to change. As you take the emotion out of the equation, the memories begin to change. How you represent those memories begin to change. Remember, you can't touch, last Thursday, right? So it was how I was thinking about it in that moment that was causing the emotion. And so I sat in that room, and I was persistent, and I tapped, and I tapped, and I tapped, and I tapped. I addressed the memories, felt the emotions, and I tapped. And when it was all said and done, I walked out of that room, and it was like walking into a different world. It was like stepping into a new reality. And it was as if my family had completely changed. Remember, this was a weekend where a lot of family was coming together, and brothers, sisters, step parents, and I experienced it completely differently. It was as if everyone in my immediate family had changed. Of course, did they change, or did I change? I changed my internal representations. I changed what I believed about myself. I hope that makes sense. Now, the reason I tell this story is because oftentimes we're not aware of those belief systems. We're not aware of those memories that are being played sort of under the scenes, right, under the radar. And so the more you can begin to recognize when you're feeling down, and even go to those places where you tend to get stirred up, my good friend and mentor Robert Smith always says, if you want to get a good healing, go to a family reunion. And that's precisely what this was for me, right? So where can you go? If you're working on a phobia, put yourself there mentally. Think about it. Get stirred up. Notice what you're doing in your mind. Notice how you're creating it. Now, granted, you don't want to step all the way into it. Just do it as much as you can and work your way through it. Does that make sense? Work your way through it. So tap, work your way through it. Be as thorough as possible. And when it comes to belief systems, those beliefs that I worked on, that I tapped on, those were things that were guiding my behavior. They were dictating how I felt about myself. They were dictating how I interacted socially with other people. They were definitely dictating how I interacted with my family. And my family might say, we didn't notice anything wrong with you, but they will tell you without a doubt today that I'm not the same person that I was 4, 5, 10 years ago. So I guess the moral of this video, or the message, is to stay persistent, address the feelings, notice the memories, clean up, be persistent, go to where you're going to be triggered, and use it. It's a blessing. It's a blessing when these things come up, because now you can address it. Address it, clean it up, make peace with it all, and go to your happy journal. Remember the blessings. Remember what's good in your life. Take time to reflect on what's good in your life. Build positive resources. I sat here today, and I was starting to feel a little down, so I did some tapping, and then I said to myself, what was a time when I was like really laughing? When was a time when I was just like belly laughing? You're holding it in. You're with a group of friends maybe, and you're just laughing and laughing. And I looked around in my mind, and I found that resource, and it immediately made me start laughing. I can kind of feel it now. And then I said, when was a time when I felt really in the zone? When was a time when I felt really connected? And I brought that resource up. And so you can do that whenever you need it, whenever you want it. So why not practice those memories? Why not practice those resources rather than just letting these other memories just sort of randomly guide you? Clean those up, practice the good ones, and your life will transform. This is Alan Combies, creator of theskillsforchange.com, and this little video series that I call Morning Coffee with Alan. I hope this was a good jolt for you for the day, and I'll look forward to speaking with you in the next one. Take care.